evening. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of School Directors of Methacton District. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The public is advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. I would like to announce some executive sessions that were held. There was an executive session of the board on July 28, 2015 for matters of personnel and for the matter before the Court of Common Pleas on the appeal of the conditional use decision by Worcester Township. There was an executive session on August 10, 2015 for matters of personnel. There was an executive session held on August 12, 2015 for matters of personnel and contract negotiations. And there was an executive session of the Human Resources Committee of the Board on August 18, 2015 for matters of personnel. I would like to make some comments. The Board of School Directors is responsible for decision-making of the school district within the guidelines established by the state. At the present time, the board is addressing many issues, including curriculum, goal setting, restructuring of the administration, completion of the field project, long-term financial planning, and considering the recommendation for a school closure. With a few specific restrictions, its deliberations and decisions are required to be conducted in public, and the public meetings include an opportunity for citizens to provide input. School Board Policy 903 explains what is expected of those members of the public who choose to speak during a meeting. This policy limits the amount of time for each speaker to 3 minutes. The policy also authorizes the presiding officer to cut those 3 minutes short when the comments of an individual are personally directed, abusive, obscene, or not relevant. If everyone who attends our board meetings cooperates with these reasonable rules that we have adopted, it will help ensure an orderly meeting and at the same time provide those residents and taxpayers who wish to be heard with a fair opportunity to comment. Remembering that the board is responsible for proper decision-making and is held accountable for its actions, it is appropriate to comment on a concern raised by the public that suggests the board has acted inappropriately. There have been assertions that the board had predetermined that an elementary school would be closed. This is incorrect. No decision has yet been made, and the administration continues its efforts at gathering information that will help the board in the decision-making process. At the appropriate time, this will be on the agenda of a public board meeting for a decision. In the meantime, we are all working on behalf of the citizens of Methacton School District. Our goal is the appropriate education of our children. While we may have differences of opinion about how the work of the district is carried out, it would be valuable if we all could communicate our thoughts with civility. This is another method we can use to educate the children, showing them how mature adults communicate respectfully. That's the end of my statement. The next item on our agenda is attendance, and all board members are present except Mr. Nascimento and Mr. Phillips. Recognition of guests and scheduled speakers. Dr. Zerbe.
Ms. Hackett, this evening I have one guest speaker, Chief Carroll of Lower Providence Township Police Department. Mr. Carroll, Chief Carroll, will you please come forward?
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. I wanted to take this opportunity to address the school board and the public with respect to the papal visit on September 26th and 27th in Philadelphia. Probably most of you daily on the news have seen or heard the reports and the projections and what have you. And I just wanted to make sure, and we've done this from the very outset, we want to make sure that our entire community is aware of the potential impacts of this visit to our community as well as the region. So tonight, just a very, very brief presentation. I see that you have a very full agenda. So just some background. Dr. Zerbe and Mr. Sosnovic and Deputy Chief Stan Turtle and I have met twice. We've communicated outside of those meetings with respect to the impacts that we anticipate in our area. Montgomery County is in a unique situation in regard to this event. A lot of folks are saying, well, Jesus, in Philadelphia, it really doesn't affect us. We're 17 miles west of Philadelphia, not a big deal. It is a big deal. It has the potential to be a very big deal. To keep my remarks even briefer than I had anticipated, I would suggest to everyone, as I did at our Board of Supervisors meeting last Thursday night, that you avail yourselves of our township website, lowerprovidence.org. We have a very, very brief PowerPoint. What would anything be without a PowerPoint presentation? But a very brief PowerPoint giving you some background information which may be in the general media, but also some information as far as our specific concerns. Our two general areas of concern for our area are traffic, particularly with the closing of I-76 at 10 p.m. on Friday night for the duration of the weekend. If any of you have traveled back and forth to the city of Philadelphia at any time where there's been a closure of the Schuylkill Expressway, you know that there's a serious ripple effect to that. That ripple effect will clearly impact Route 422, which will then impact Germantown Pike, Ridge Pike, Route 363, our surrounding areas. So we, on a regional basis, are planning as far out as west of Pottstown to have impacts from a traffic standpoint. We have a number of security concerns within the area. In Montgomery County, we have 4 of the SEPTA train stations where there'll be large gatherings of people during 2 periods on each of the 2 days. And we have to devote a significant amount of resources to those 4 locations. But the really big concern is St. Charles Seminary, where the Pope is staying for those 2 days, is located in Montgomery County. So we need to, virtually every agency in Montgomery County, from EMS to fire to police, needs to provide resources to that area. So we don't want to overstate, but by the same token, we don't want to be underprepared. So in the interest of ensuring that our school district, that our students, that our community, Lower Providence Township and Worcester Township, are adequately aware of what the potential impacts could be, we wanted to make sure that we appeared here tonight. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's probably better that I answer questions than give you all of the dirty details. To the extent that I can answer questions, you have to remember that the agency in charge of this operation has the word secret in it. So, and that's sort of been the buzzword of some of our meetings. But we've discussed a number of issues with Dr. Zerbe, and our concerns. Our concerns have adjusted over the last 2 weeks, and what we anticipate is we'll be in pretty much continuous communication with both Dr. Zerbe and Mr. Sosnovic with respect to what we foresee as what potentially could happen in this area. Again, traffic is a key issue, being able to get from point A to point B, and secondarily, EMS issues. If we have traffic issues, we anticipate that many of the attendees to the event from across the country, across the world, are going to be older. So they're going to have medical issues. So our EMS resources are going to be extremely taxed. From a township standpoint, our Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution last Thursday night declaring a state of emergency. A lot of folks may say, well, geez, you're 5 weeks out from this event. Why would you declare a state of emergency? There's a number of legal reasons that we've done it, a number of fiscal reasons that we've done it, but we also wanted to make sure that we had it in place as we went forward. Our Board of Supervisors also has communicated to those groups that have contracted to use our township facilities throughout that weekend that those facilities are not available to them because they're part of our contingency plans, and also we understand that our resources for that time are going to be extremely taxed.
Chief Carroll, we received several calls at the district relating to a question about whether or not schools will be closed, open at any time, or if there's a request for closures at any time during the visit before the Saturday and Sunday and possibly after. Could you speak to that?
Sure. The way that we're uniformly addressing this, again, not just from a Lower Providence Township or Worcester Township standpoint, but from a Philadelphia metropolitan region. And we were fortunate enough on Friday to be in a 4-hour meeting with all 5 counties, Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery. And uniformly, what the message is treat it as an anticipated snow event. Know that it's going to be a blizzard. So from a personal level, and again, some of this is in our PowerPoint, make sure you have gas in your car, because we're not sure that the gas tankers, if the traffic problems materialize based on the closure of the interstates, whether the gas tankers will be able to get from the refineries to the Wawa. So gas up. Make sure you have enough food, make sure you have enough medicine. With respect to the schools, our major concern is a transportation concern. Number one, that we don't want to get students to school on Friday and then have an influx of traffic coming from all over the country. And the difficulty with this event is they're not selling tickets. So 1 million people could show up, or 6 million, as they did in the Philippines in a driving rainstorm, show up. So we don't know really how many people are coming. So it's essentially prepare for the worst. So our recommendation to you, as I've indicated, number one, we're going to communicate as quickly as we possibly can our sense of what the expectation is as far as how it's going to adversely affect our community. And most importantly, so that you can get the word out to your families, because obviously, whether it be a child care issue or children being left home alone or parents, a lot of companies, some in the audience, their companies may already be making contingency plans where they've rented hotel rooms, and that's been a difficulty for the World Meeting of Families, that corporations have bought up blocks of hotel rooms so that their staffs can stay within close proximity to their offices. So as quickly as we know, you will know. But we have the luxury of knowing about this. It isn't like a snowstorm where we only have 48 hours notice. We have 5 weeks notice here. And we should have a pretty good idea of what our recommendation will be to you from our best information. Our difficulty, as I said now, is we're relying on some measures that we really don't know. So that SEPTA passes, they didn't sell as aggressively as everyone anticipated. Everyone thought, particularly based on the first day failure, they're going to sell out in no time. And then they offered the $10,000 tickets per day, and they are not sold out, so now they're selling the single tickets. That can mean one of two things. That can mean that no one's coming, or it can mean everyone thinks, hey, I'm not going to get stuck on SEPTA. I like driving my own car. Philadelphia has made it abundantly clear you cannot drive into the city. You cannot. There's just nowhere to put your car. So the best thing that we could tell the community and tell the board is that consider Friday, and we also have a concern on Monday because the Mass on the Parkway is over at 6:15, 6:30. The Pope will be out of Philadelphia by 8 p.m. But those, however many, if it's 500,000 people, 1 million people, 1.5 million people, they're all not going to go home on Sunday night. They're going to be exhausted from standing on the Parkway. So they're going to go back to wherever they were that day or the night before, and then they're probably going to make their journey home on Monday. So we have a consideration of Monday being a traffic issue also. That was a long answer to a short question.
No, that was very appropriate. It appears that, as we've talked, that the numbers or the estimates may have changed, and therefore, initially we were talking about we might need a closure. Today we're talking about we want to be able to make sure that we tell our parents to prepare for a potential delay start.
Absolutely.
Or a potential early dismissal?
My best advice at this point is that everyone, not just the parents of school children, but everyone, prepare a plan B for Friday of that week. We know that Saturday and Sunday, once they close the expressway at 10 p.m. on Friday night, all bets are off. But our concern, particularly in this room, is for that period Thursday night into Friday where folks will be coming in, large traffic congestion. So there's a possibility that we may call you on Monday or Tuesday of that week and say, hey, it's not looking so good, you better cancel Friday. Our recommendation is to cancel Friday. Or it may be that, hey, things are going to be bad on Friday afternoon in anticipation of the expressway closing, so everyone wants to get into the city before 10 p.m. on Friday. You may want to get a half a day in, get the buses off the road by noontime, 1 o'clock, and then, and then we'll be fine. So possibility of half-day Friday. And then, for lack of a better term, I think Monday has to be a game day decision. But our recommendation to the community is have a plan B in place for just as you would for a snow day. So whether it be a child care or transportation or after-school care or whatever the case may be, plan for both Friday and Monday. And as I've said to any number of people, come September 29th, we're going to either look really, really smart or we're going to be really, but we just don't know. There's no way to forecast at this point what the attendance is going to be.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just a couple of small ones, Chief. The weekend sporting events in the county, how is that being done?
Carl Luke, our Board of Supervisors last Thursday night directed our township manager to blanket no activities on our township-owned parks. And there's a number of reasons for that, as I indicated earlier. Number one, some of those parks, we have to have contingencies in place for any number of emergency situations. So we have the unfortunate existence of thinking of worst-case scenarios. And one of the worst-case scenarios, just as an example, is if they shut down I-76 and let's say there was an event where they shut down the turnpike, everyone's going to Route 422. We have motorists stranded on Route 422. The County Department of Public Safety, we actually have pods staged along Route 422 in order to address basic human needs of people who, the analogy of the I-78 event several winters ago, where we had people stranded in cars for 48 hours. I'm not saying that that is going to happen. Please don't say Bud Carroll said that people are going to be stranded. But in our world, we have to prepare for that. just as we have to prepare for any number of other things. Similarly, a lot of folks have said, well, geez, it wasn't a big deal in 1979 when the Pope came to Philadelphia. You didn't have to do this and you didn't have to do that. Well, we also didn't have September 11, 2001. And as we're having our meetings last week, we're watching the video that you've probably all seen on the news of a young man who I actually said when I first saw it, it looks like one of my students at Cabrini College dropping a backpack on a train platform in Bangkok and killing a number of people. So again, we're not here to cry wolf or chicken little, the sky is falling. Just have a plan in place. And we will be updating our township website. Key recommendation, if you live in Lower Providence Township and you're not already on our Blackboard Connect system, highly recommend that you go to our township website. Takes a couple of seconds. You click on the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the icon for the Blackboard Connect system. They're the telephone, text, or email messages as far as any emergency notifications. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, Lower Providence on Facebook and Twitter. And also, if you want a more regional look, go to readymontcopa.org and sign up for the notifications from the County Department of Public Safety. There's going to be a lot of information pushed out from all of those sources throughout that weekend and anticipation of that weekend, but particularly during the weekend.
Chief, if I could just follow up, I understand that the township parks and public areas will be closed, but I was thinking more about high school varsity sports, away games, and various activities around the country.
That's been our discussions with Dr. Zerbe. Our number one concern is transportation, so getting the teams to and from the events. I know that there are surrounding districts that have had those same conversations. There's a large band competition at the North Penn High School on that Saturday night, where Talmenson Township has had conversations with the North Penn School District about the wisdom, particularly with their close proximity to the Colpsville interchange. So if the Pennsylvania Turnpike closes for some reason, it's termed Plan X, they divert everything off onto Route 63, Sumney Town Pike. Are we able to get emergency vehicles? Are we able to get people out of a place or into a place? So with respect to athletic events, we've discussed that, and our recommendation is that if it can be changed, change it. If it can't, make sure you understand and have a plan in place. The other issue is having EMS personnel available to staff your event. So I don't even know if you have a football game that weekend at this point, but if you have a football game and you have an expectation that an ambulance is going to be there, that ambulance may have committed already or be committed to somewhere else other than the football game. I'm not sure if you saw in the media, but Philadelphia is asking for 500 emergency medical technicians to come to Philadelphia on a volunteer basis. So, we're, as I said, all of our resources in Montgomery County, we're at the point where we're tapped out and we're going to outside agencies in order to supplement our resources.
Any other questions? I'd just like to ask a follow-up on facilities. You indicated that the township facilities are somewhat subscribed for that weekend. Are you going to be making any call on school facilities?
No, that's under your purview.
Well, if I could say, I want to thank Lower Providence Township Police Department and Chief Carroll for their leadership in addressing what could potentially be a challenging situation. The Pope's visit, as he mentions, has a potential to increase congestion in our area significantly. We believe that advance notice to our families will allow them to best prepare an event that we are asked to delay, to dismiss early, or to close schools. If there's no objection from the Board of Directors, I will proceed with a communication to the families, informing them with an abundance of caution that we recommend that they plan in advance for these days ahead of us, and that we keep them apprised and also keep them aware of the websites, as Chief Carroll has mentioned.
Any comments from the board? Okay. Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you very
Chief Carroll.
much. I appreciate it.
And now we'll move to reports. Finance Committee, Mr. Pellicano.
Thanks, Madam Vice President. The Finance Committee had a meeting on Tuesday, August 18th in the Frida Education Center. Present at the meeting were myself, Mrs. Hackett, Mr. McFarland, Dr. Zerby, and Mr. Whiteleather. There was about 5 topics on the agenda overall. The first one talked about our 14-15 preliminary final revenues and expenditures and projected budget surplus. Right now, although we have not had the audit completed yet, we're still projecting a budget surplus of about $2.36 million. The audit of the financials started, I think, this past Monday, and it'll conclude in about a week's time or so, given how fieldwork progresses with the audit. But upon finalization of that audit, then the committee will review the surplus and then make a recommendation for a possible distribution of funds accordingly to the board. The board will ultimately decide there. We also reviewed our standard monthly financial reports. Early in the year, there wasn't a lot there, as we just kind of got kicked things off. There were some questions around, variances and what's been spent to date, but nothing dramatic came out of that really discussion. Mr. Whiteleather also, working with our financial advisors, brought up the topic of a debt review and some refunding or restructuring opportunities. The good news is it looks like there is a opportunity where we could realize close to $3 million in savings via a funding opportunity. And right now, the Finance Committee would like to proceed with the discussion of this item a little further in September, and work with Mr. Whiteleather to present a more in-depth review of this particular opportunity. So that's a positive item that came out of the meeting. We also talked about our calendar of topics for the coming year. Mr. Whiteleather had prepared a calendar of topics. There was some back and forth on some other items that we might want to add in. And again, these are topics that we might cycle through in addition to our normal standard topics of like our financial reports or whatever it may be. So for example, one of the things we talked about was a review of our earned income tax or per capita tax collector, to do a presentation on that process. So there's probably going to be a few other items that we'll add to the calendar events over time, but we'll see how that progresses, and we'll continue to take feedback in that particular area. And lastly, on the 16-17 budget timeline, again, Mr. Whiteleather presented that and the timeline. He also indicated, again, this because 16 is a presidential election year, everything gets moved up even with the primary, so that actually compresses our schedule a little bit, so it's actually going to push probably our overall budget process up probably by about a month or so. So he's going to come out with a little bit more of a refined timeline in the near future on that, and we'll put together more of a draft calendar that's kind of closer to what we really think it's going to be for coming up at our September 15th, September 2015 Finance Committee meeting. We also had courtesy of the floor. A number of the residents brought up a variety of different questions, and that was it. We ended the meeting at about 9:01. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Pellicano. The next item is a Property Committee. I know we haven't had any meetings since our last board meeting. The Human Resources Committee, Mr. Roth.
Thank you. Yes, Human Resources Committee did have a meeting on Tuesday, August 18th at 6:30 p.m. We only had 3 discussion topics to go over. One was administrative staffing update on the CPO, which I believe the deadline for applications was extended to September 10th. Right? So they are ongoing. Support staff and professional staff update was given by Mr. Harney. How are we doing with that? Moving along?
Very good. We still have a few instructional assistants and personal care assistants, but we're working through that this week.
Excellent. And then we, as typically we do, is we review the board agenda items under staffing and personnel items. We had a few members of the public who mentioned some things at courtesy of the floor, and that was it. Meeting lasted maybe about a half an hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. The next committee is the Education Committee, and I will report for that. We met on August the 3rd, 2015 at 7 p.m. We had 3 separate reports. Dr. Angstadt presented a report on the health services provided by the district, noting that the staff is comprised of 10 nurses. Ms. Bonder presented a report on the needs assessment for professional development for staff, which was a very enlightening report. The information they obtained will be used for the professional development needs of the staff for the coming year. And Ms. Katona gave us information on extracurricular activities at some of the elementary schools as we get more information on that subject. The meeting adjourned about 8:35 p.m. The North Montco, skipped. Communications and Community Relations Committee, Mr. McFarland.
Thank you. The committee did not meet in August up to this point. We are undergoing some reorganization steps, and we'll have an update on that in the next meeting.
Thank you. The Policy Committee, Ms. Woodring.
Thank you. Policy Committee met on August 12. The substance of the meeting resulted in 10 first reads that we'll go over later on the agenda. 5 voting items were carried forward from the July docket or the agenda. And you will note also that we have 4 student handbooks to approve, which culminates a lot of work from the principals and some community volunteers. So thank you for that effort. And the only other significant thing, I think, is that the October 14 meeting was scheduled and now becomes in conflict with the PSBA Leadership Conference. So that has been rescheduled for October 20th at 9:30 a.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Woodring. Next is the intermediate unit, and it's actually my responsibility. I have my first actual board meeting tomorrow night, and I will let you know more later. The North Montco Technical Career Center, Ms. Woodring.
Thank you. We met as a JOC over at the Technical Career Center on the 17th of August. And Mr. Lucas shared with us the new PA career guides. Now, those guides are issued out of the Department of Labor and Industry, and they are career guides for, there's 3 this time. This is the first career guide to be issued under the Wolf administration. There is a PA career guide for middle school, which would be very helpful for those parents of middle school students, because, as we all know, our career path begins in 7th grade. And these career guides, there's also one for high school, and one that's not posted yet is for job seekers. So these 3 career guides reveal things like wage and job outlook information, interest assessments, which is very useful for our students, and tips for marketing yourself if you're looking for a job. Those, again, are very helpful. The website has those guides. That's www.Department of Labor and Industry, shortened to dli.state.pa.us. The second thing I'd like to share is that the Technical Career Center was proud to take the gold at their Skills USA competition in Kentucky in June. We had a team of 2 juniors who took the gold in mechatronics. One was from PV and the other from North Penn, and they will be formally recognized with an award ceremony in September. The Technical Career Center is competing for 3 grants. One is for a Career Pathways program, which would yield $400,000 a year for 4 years. That's quite a healthy amount. The second is an equipment grant for $200,000, and the third is a career counseling grant to be conducted at the middle school level. And the unfortunate feature with all this is that the budget impasse will hold up the awarding of these monies. Our next meeting will be held on September 21st. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Woodring. Communications, Ms. Lynch?
Good evening. As we plan for the conclusion of our Fields project, look for information on our website about a ribbon-cutting ceremony and a community celebration about the middle of October. Plans are to have activities for families and opportunities for all to see and experience the new fields, and actually have some activities for families and some food and some fun. So we're looking forward to that. Work continues on the Warrior Pride Capital campaign with a beef and beverage event to benefit the Fields project. That'll be held on October 3rd at St. Helena's. Tickets and more details on how to participate in that event and continue to support the Fields project will be available in the next week or so. And our fall community education program guide is on the website. We've already begun taking enrollments. There are discounts for enrolling early before the first week in September. So if you have an interest in learning to play the guitar or art or cooking or any number of things, please go to the website and sign up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. And the superintendent's report, Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Ms. Hackett. The Methacton School District starts school September 1, 2015. We spend much of the summer cleaning buildings and preparing our classrooms and also working on curriculum, along with many other tasks for the return of the Methacton children. Our custodial and maintenance crews have done a terrific job, and I just want to personally thank them for all their hard work. It's no secret that our grounds crew has also been working very hard as well. Significant work has been done to keep all of our campuses looking sharp and getting ready for the start of the new school year. I want to thank them as well. Our secretarial and administrative support staff are second to none in that they work alongside our building principals and other administrative staff to ensure that a fresh and exciting start to a school year. And lastly, our teaching staff. Some veteran, some new faces will take the helm at the front of the classroom in welcoming our children back for an exciting learning opportunity. Our teachers are exceptional. I want to thank them in advance for all of their hard work and what they do for our community and our children. So before we start with some new extraordinary news for 2015-16 school year, I still have one leftover 2014-15 recognition to share. I'm very excited to share the news about the amazing success of a group of our high school students. You'll recall that in April of 2015, the board approved funding for our team's students to attend a national competition in Texas over the summer. TEAM stands for a Test of Engineering Aptitude, Mathematics, and Science. Participating middle and high school students take part in challenging competition designed to help them discover their potential for engineering. This was a national competition, and when I say national, we had over 800 students competing from all across the country. And well, it's my pleasure to announce that our students won very big. In fact, Methacton students are national champions. The Methacton team of seniors, Ajay Beno, Kevin Bijou, Lucy Yai, Christopher Luttrell, Kevin Liu, Vinay Parakala, Jenny Zhang, and Jeffrey Lee spent several days battling 800 students from across the country who competed in teams of 8 for the national crown. Our team brought home 2 trophies. The overall grade 11-12 winners of the national competition and first place for the problem-solving competition. We are very proud of their accomplishments, and we look forward to bringing their team advisor, Ms. Caddy, to a future meeting so that the board can recognize her efforts and celebrate in the presenting of recognition for those team members. And hopefully, we can see other teams repeat this effort. So we're proud of them, and I wanted to share that with everyone. I have a couple other items, if it would be okay, Mr. President, or Vice President. The field project update, we have just some brief information that we posted to the district website this afternoon. We want you to know that while we had anticipation to have some of the fields online for our student use earlier than currently anticipated, it's important for us to make sure that you know that we're working hard to get them ready for our student use as soon as possible. So without any further ado, our substantial completion for the track is still slated for October 2nd. Our softball fields, we're looking for substantial completion on or about September 7th for sodding and planting of grass. Field lighting, while we remain confident that lit fields will be part of our near future, the issue remains in the hands of the Court of Common Pleas on an appeal of the conditional use decision by Worcester Township. The timeline for a decision sits with the court's schedule and may be made within a few weeks to several months. We are progressing with all other aspects of the project and have plans to address the installation of lights once approval is properly granted. Our auxiliary field, while the auxiliary field was on schedule to be substantially completed by August 21st, that did not occur as the general contractor wasn't able to meet the requirements, specifically safety requirements for allowing students to access the field. The turf is down, the infill is in place, there's some other grooming work that's taking place, but the contractor and the district hope that by the 28th of August, all the safety measures will be in place so that safe access to the fields from parking lots or from buildings can occur. The stadium field is currently remains with a September 5th substantial completion. It will allow us to use those fields if we complete in this time between that and the October 2nd substantial completion of the track. And the restroom is still slated for completion on September 21st. There is quite a bit of additional detail on the district website related to that. The school consolidation update. The School Consolidation Committee has been hard at work. The committee met on August 19th and the 24th to hear presentations from 4 selected vendors to A, provide a second set of enrollment projections, and B, if needed, be able to utilize those enrollment projections in the event a redrawing of attendance boundaries would be necessary. The redrawing of attendance areas committee will meet again on September 3rd to complete their work in assisting me with bringing no less than 2 vendors forward to present to the board in a public meeting. Once the vendors are selected for the public presentation, a special meeting of the Board of School Directors will be scheduled. The board will then be provided with information and presentations to consider and be given the opportunity to ask questions prior to rendering any decision on vendor selection. While it is critical to remember that no decision has been made to close or not to close a school, the work of these committees remains critical to ensuring that the board receives the information they need to potentially make a decision in the future, but not before December of 2015. Some of the immediate work before us includes the review of responses to questions on capacity sent to Thompson and Associates, the selection of a vendor and subsequent review of a second set of enrollment projections, and the revisiting of enrollment projections in the fall of 2015 by Pell in order to address the large rise in the district's cohort survival rate in 2014-15. A more detailed update is posted on the district website. That was posted earlier today. Another piece of information I think is important for our parents and certainly the board to be aware of is PSSA testing. On August 13th, 2015, I sent a school messenger notification to parents of students going into grades 4 through 9 and placed the same message on the front of the district website regarding our PSSA results. As mentioned in that notification, the Pennsylvania Department of Education notified school districts that performance results on the Pennsylvania System of School Assessment, PSSA, test administered in 2015 declined statewide. While there were several reasons for this decline, one major reason is that the English language arts and mathematics tests were designed to measure understanding of new, more rigorous PA core standards, and there was limited transition time between final adoption and implementation of those standards. In very simple terms, we found ourselves, like others across the Commonwealth, where we taught third graders the third grade math curriculum all year, and then, as an example, for our final exam, administered a fourth grade exam. You would not expect, and this is certainly a basic illustration of what we encountered, but you basically need to expect that our students weren't necessarily tested on the materials that they were taught. So we need to work as a district with our teachers to align our curriculum to make sure that it's in line with those things that are being taught. So those preliminary results of Methacton's performance continue to show that we outperform statewide averages. This is good news, but it means that our teachers, that our excellent teachers will need to continue to develop and implement curriculum that is aligned to what is being tested. This will be our priority for the upcoming school year. And lastly, when we do receive our final results, we will evaluate the data and prepare a report to the community, likely in October or November of 2015. The last item I have for the board and the public is board and superintendent goals update. The Board of School Directors established goals in September of 2014. The goals consisted of educational, operational, financial, and capital projects goals. Most of these goals were accomplished under the leadership of the board and superintendent, combined with the efforts of the Methacton administration, faculty, and staff. The board accomplished educational goals as seen through presentations by Ms. Gattona and others on PSSA and Keystone exams, as well as school performance profiles. The board received and reviewed high school course offerings and subsequently established policy to review course subscriptions annually. The board accomplished operational goals whereby they established a communications and community relations committee, of the board, which worked to distribute a monthly e-newsletter reviewing facts about important issues facing the district. As part of the operational goals, the board acquired a representation to assist with contract negotiations going forward. Under financial goals, the district gained greater insight into the mandated costs, the short and long-term issues facing the district, and how new expenditure reductions can impact our organization. Under projects and capital goals, the high school field construction project and student enrollment study goals will continue into the coming school year. While much progress has been made on the Fields Improvement Project and with research and planning related to changes in our enrollment, there is work remaining in both of these areas. As for the superintendent goals, a report of the final status has been posted in the superintendent's area of the district website. The document notes that the high school renovations project will be continued and that the implementation of a comprehensive strategic plan will be deferred until the 15-16 school year. The board and the superintendent will be discussing in public goals for the 2015-16 school year in the coming months. That ends my report.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. We're now going to move into the areas where the board will vote on certain items. And before we do that, these are items, sections 8 through 12. The public may comment on any of those items. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment on items 8 through 12?
Hi. Kim Aubrey Larson, East Lower Providence. For item 8, the approval of the board meeting minutes. On page 7 of the minutes from the July 28th meeting, the section for courtesy of the floor does not indicate that the courtesy of the floor portion of the meeting was canceled. So I was wondering if we could amend the minutes to reflect that.
Good evening. Also, under the same topic,
Excuse me, could you give us your name? and-
sure, Melissa Hepschman-Schreiber from Lower Providence. And what follows will be a letter read by myself, Shannon Puffer from Lower Providence, and Ashley Wilkerson from Lower Providence. Dear board members, as community members in attendance at the Methacton School Board's July 28, 2015 regular public meeting, we write to express our view that the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act was violated at that meeting and to give notice to the board that we do not and will not take such violations lightly. We refer specifically to Board President Nascimiento's decision to unilaterally curtail the board agenda and to cancel courtesy of the floor. This was the public's opportunity to comment on relevant matters of concern, and he chose to cut off public objections to that action, ostensibly due to the absence of 4 board members, but notwithstanding the presence of a quorum. We explain below why we believe these actions violated the Sunshine Act as well as the board's own policies. We also explain our collective decision in lieu of pursuing legal remedies under the Sunshine Act, including a summary offense under Section 714A of that law, but to instead put the board on notice of our position that similar conduct will not be accepted in the future. As the board presumably knows, the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act specifically addresses the public's right to participation at public meetings. Section 7...
Excuse me, Ms. Schreiber, which section of the items 8 to 12 are you referring to?
This is specifically with regard to the board meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Section 710.1 of the Act provides in part that the board shall provide a reasonable opportunity at each advertised regular meeting for residents or taxpayers or both to comment on matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before the board prior to taking official action. If the board determines that there is not sufficient time at that meeting for residents or for taxpayers or both to comment, the board may defer the comment period to the next regular meeting or to a special meeting occurring in advance of the next regular meeting. Additionally, the Sunshine Act provides that any person has the right to raise an objection at any time to a perceived violation of that law at any board meeting. Several of the board's own policies address the Sunshine Act's public participation requirement. Policy 006, meetings. Policy 903, public participation at board meetings, and Policy 002, authority and powers. Together, these policies establish the following. Number 1, the presiding officer at each public board meeting must follow board policy for the conduct of public meetings. Number 2, members of the public may address the board at board meetings in accordance with board procedures and policy. Number 3, the board is required to provide at each regular meeting 2 separate and distinct opportunities for public participation, one limited to agenda items and another on all relevant matters of concern. The board president is not empowered to alter the order of these agenda items. The board president is empowered to alter the order of these agenda items, but not to unilaterally cancel or defer them. The full board is empowered by a majority vote of all members present to determine that there is insufficient time for public comment and to defer public participation until the next regular public board meeting or to an intervening special public board meeting.
Shannon Puffer, Lower Providence. These policies also empower the board upon a disputed ruling of the board president to overrule the president's ruling by majority vote. Policy 903, Section 3. Copies of the Sunshine Act and board policies described above are attached to this letter. With that background in mind, on July 27th, one day before the last regular board meeting, Mr. Nascimento and Superintendent Zerbe caused an agenda for that meeting to be publicly posted. Policy 6, Section 5A. As required by the Sunshine Act as well as by board policy, this meeting agenda included, as is usual, 2 separate items: public comment on board action items and courtesy of the floor. As Mr. Nascimento subsequently acknowledged, he had been aware throughout the month of July and prior to the issuance of that agenda that several members of the 9-member board would not be present at the July meeting. Nevertheless, the agenda issued, and at 7 p.m. on July 28th, in the presence of a quorum of the board, Mr. Nascimento called the regular public board meeting to order. Numerous members of the public were in attendance, as was a Philadelphia Area News Network camera crew. At the outset of the meeting, Mr. Nascimento announced that due to the absence of several board members, he was unilaterally curtailing the meeting agenda, including canceling courtesy of the floor. Although Mr. Nascimento permitted limited public comments to the extent he deemed directly related to the remaining agenda items, he restricted other public comments. Several times during attempts by members of the public to comment on members of concern, including comments objecting to Mr. Nascimento's decision to curtail the meeting agenda, Mr. Nascimento interrupted and cut off those comments when he deemed them insufficiently related to agenda items that he had decided to retain. Despite public objections, including a request to put the matter to full board approval, at no point was Mr. Nascimento's decision to put the board to a vote. These actions are not supported by board policies or by the Sunshine Act's requirements that these policies are intended to implement. The board did not determine that there was insufficient time for public comment at the meeting, as required by the process set forth in the Sunshine Act and board policy for deferral to public participation. In fact, the board didn't determine anything at all, nor should it be lost on anyone that the July 28th meeting was shorter than any public board meeting held to date in 2015, leaving ample time for public comment.
Ashley Wilkerson. In light of these actions at the July 28th meeting, community members in attendance at that meeting have discussed whether or not to pursue legal remedies, including for a summary offense under the Sunshine Act, punishable by fines of up to $1,000 for a first offense and up to $2,000 for a subsequent offense, along with costs of prosecution. In this instance, we chose not to do so for the sole reason that we would rather see this district's funds spent on the education of the district's children than on more legal fees. The last time that the Methacton School Board was successfully taken to court for a Sunshine Act violation, it resulted in costs to the district in excess of $80,000. The last time a member of the board was sued for his conduct against a constituent, in that case former board president Van Horn, the district incurred well more than $30,000 in legal fees. On various matters in the last fiscal year alone, the district has spent approximately $340,000 just in legal fees. Given the district's track record, we decided in this instance that we would rather our tax dollars be spent on the children than spent on yet another court case. Our decision not to pursue legal remedies in this case should not be misinterpreted. We believe the case for pursuing relief in the courts is quite strong. In this case, however, our collective decision was to provide you with clear notice of our position that the cancellation of courtesy of the floor on July 28th and the restriction of public comments and objections at that board meeting each violated state law. We take this approach this time to help ensure that more of our tax dollars go to the children and not to your lawyers. Future Sunshine Act violations of this nature will be viewed as intentional and purposeful and in willful and wanton disregard of the Act's requirements. We reserve the right to pursue all available remedies for such misconduct should it occur again. We request that this letter, including attachments, be appended to the minutes of the August 25th, 2015 board meeting. It is signed by Candy Alaba, John Andrews, Joe Bickelman, Carol Bickelman, Shannon Chase, Michelle Davis, Howard Delfiner, Elizabeth Drummond, Brian W. Earnshaw, Megan Fitzgerald, Valerie Jedwabny, Michelle Kirshner, Shannon L. Peffer, Melissa Schreiber, Jennifer Stevenson, Julie Stern-Delfiner, and Ashley Wilkerson. I would like to say at the conclusion of that letter that on a personal note, Mrs. Hackett, I would like to agree with what you said earlier, that we absolutely should take all of these opportunities to set a good example to our children. And I would argue that we are. If you look at the signatories on this letter, if you look at the people in this room, you've got constituents in this room whose children are just starting through the educational process. You've got people whose kids have gone all the way through and are done and graduated from college. You've got people from widely varying political ideologies and from every single school in this district. And we've come together as individuals to form a cohesive group who is fiercely loyal to this school district. And with regard to setting a good example for our children, we've shown them that big decisions require research and diligence and thoughtfulness. We've shown them that their educations are worth fighting for. And we've shown them that just by getting involved we can make a difference. And I'm proud that my children have learned that, and I hope that it teaches them to become active and engaged citizens as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkerson.
I know those weren't from me. Chris Boardman, Worcester, I wanted to talk about Pell. You mentioned it there, and we also have it as an action item related to Pell.
I'm sorry.
Pell?
Pell?
Yes.
There's no action.
Well, there's a bill listed. Do you want me to defer until the courtesy of the floor? But you spoke about them. There's an action item related to Pell, and I just wanted to share my comments about Pell in general.
I made a comment about their future re-look at the October 1, 2015.
I'm asking you, would you prefer me to speak now or later?
It'd be better to do it in courtesy of the floor.
Okay, I'll come
Thank
back
you.
later.
Thank you.
Michael Ryan, Lower Providence. I'm speaking to items 9.1 and 9.2, the approval of the list of bills in the Treasury report. I actually will talk about Pell because my question is regarding the actual payment to them. It is in the amount of approximately $8,100. I am curious, is this the final payment scheduled to Pell at the current time?
At this time, we're taking information from members. We're not answering questions.
Okay. I will say, because I said this a couple months ago during another meeting, that please do not pay them another dime. We just paid them another $8,000, and like I said, they came back and they stuck with the exact same answer. They're going to do it again if you bring them back in the fall, and we're wasting taxpayer dollars. My second point is for item 9.2, the Treasury report. I brought this up in the Finance Committee meeting, but my comments didn't make it into record, so I'll bring it up again. Capital Reserve Fund shows a balance of $136,000. That is the capital reserve for the entire school district. Some history on this. A year ago, it was $684,000. 2 years ago, $1.843332, and 3 years ago, we are talking about $2.9 million. What happened? This is a drastic reduction in a capital reserve, and if we continue to go, it will last about 2 more months before we officially hit zero based off of current spending patterns. I don't quite understand this. I know that there will be a budget surplus this year. We talked about $2.4 million, which will be reduced to about $1.5 million. Even if you split that half and half with the general fund and the capital reserve, that barely gets your capital reserve back up to $750,000. With all the work that we've claimed needs to be done on Audubon and Arrowhead, how do we plan on paying for this? Taxpayers want to know.
Andrea Reese, Lower Providence. I know there's a fine line between courtesy of the floor and board action items, so I will stick to the 2 board action items. One is, and forgive me all these numbers, 9.1 list of bills. You have a bill to the Pennsylvania School Board Association for $13,500 plus. Very great organization. I commend the 9 volunteers that are part of that. I'm sure Public School Board Association, you are elected 9 volunteers. We pay this $13,500 membership. They recently sent out a resolution to all of the school districts in Pennsylvania. The resolution talked about standardized testing. Pottsgrove, Owen-J. Roberts, Springford, where I spent my convocation this morning, all talked about it. Last night, Springford signed the resolution saying they're concerned about standardized testing and all the time it is taking away from our children and our teachers. I'm wondering, as members of PSBA, when Methacton intends to speak up against the amount of standardized testing. I'm curious how many board members are taking advantage of that PSBA membership and all that it offers. I guess I have to write that down on one of your cards because we don't get answers. You okay? Do you
Yes,
have one
you
of
can-
your
if you give us
magic
your-
cards? Second is 10.15 advisements. Again, when we attend these committee meetings, you generously say public commented, and that's about all we get. I had a question at the HR Finance Committee meeting about, you explained all the advisements and how one person might be part-time somewhere and part-time another place, and you're just letting us know where everyone's going. One of those questions was answered in number 1 and number 6 for me, but I still have an answer about, a question about number 15. It seems as if there are still two, possibly, 1 and 15 answers my question that there are now 2 instructors at Woodland, but it seems as if there may or may not be 2 instructors for media specialist at Woodland. There very well might be. It's a little bit confusing because everybody shares. So there wasn't an answer at the HR committee meeting, now there is, but I'm still curious about the media specialist. So I'll write that on a magic card as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might need a couple.
Anyone else for board action items, comments? Okay. Then we'll move on to board meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on July 28, 2015? Nobody wants to approve. Mr. Roth? Second? Mr. Pellicano? Discussion?
I like discussion. I was not here, but based on previous voting patterns of the board, I don't see any reason why I can't vote to approve them because I have read them over. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Then I will take a vote. All those in favor? Approving the minutes? Okay, those opposed? And
They're not accurate. We asked you to.
we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have six members approved, no members opposed, and 1 abstained. We'll move on to fiscal items. Mr. Whiteleather?
Thank you. 2 items on for this evening. First is the monthly list of bills as reviewed and recommended by Finance Committee at last week's meeting, as well as item 9.2, our monthly treasurer's report, as well reviewed by Finance Committee and on for your approval this evening. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Does anyone want to take either of these items separately? No, then could I have a motion to approve fiscal items 9.1 and 9.2? Ms. Woodring? A second? Mr. Pellicano? Any discussion?
I just have one question. I noticed one of our obligations or payouts was to Grove City, I think, school district, and it just seems to me that we couldn't find anything closer than Grove City to provide a service. I mean, that's like as far away from the state as you could get. It just seems.
Might that be a special ed?
It's a special education matter, and certainly any specific information, we can get back to you on that relative to that particular question.
Any other comments? Then I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? And so it's 7-0. Next item is personnel items. Mr. Harney?
Yes, this evening we have 2 resignation professionals for your approval, 1 resignation classified. We have 4 employment professional this evening, 3 employment classified. We have 2 change of status administrative for your approval this evening, and 3 change of status professional for your approval, 1 compensated leave professional for your approval, 7 uncompensated leave professionals for your approval. We've got the supplemental contracts as listed. We have 1 addition to our classified substitute list. We have the list of new volunteers for your approval, and 18 advisements.
Thank you, Mr. Harney. Does anyone want to take any of these items separately? Then can I have a motion to approve items 10.1 through 10.15? Mr. Pellicano? Second? Ms. Woodring? Any discussion? Then I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of approving 10.1 through 10.15? 7-0. Thank you. The next item is curriculum and programs. Ms. Katona?
Thank you. This evening, I'm asking for approval of textbook adoption, a CCDSA Level 3 and a CCDSA Level 4, as at the costs indicated here. As I mentioned last month, this is an actual savings from the original approval that was just for Level 3 because of an online component that is now going in-house. The books have been on display at the Farina Center with an opportunity for the public to give questions or add comments, and nothing was received.
Thank you, Ms. Katona. Could I have a motion to approve the textbook adoption 11.1 on the agenda? Ms. Barone? Second? Ms. Shackelford? Any discussion? Then I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? That's 7-0. The next item is policy. Dr. Zerbe.
On the agenda this evening, there are, for first reading, 10 policies that are for your review. But for a motion and a vote this evening, we're asking under 12.2 for a second reading policy, curriculum development policy, curriculum review by parents, guardians, and students policy, student teachers, interns policy, use of school facilities policy, and policy 819, suicide awareness, prevention, and response policy. Those 5 policies, as well as approval of all the student handbooks, are on the agenda for your approval this evening. Are there any questions on any of the first reading, second reading, or student handbooks?
Mr. Pellicano?
I'd just like to ask a question on the facility usage policy. No issue with the policy itself, but maybe the underlying procedures, especially, I guess, with our fields coming online. I mean, are we comfortable that our procedures give the taxpayers of the district and groups comprised of families and of taxpayers and districts kind of first rights to access those facilities before we would go outside and let other groups maybe comprised of folks outside of our district have access? Is that our typical process or procedure?
I think there was a significant discussion. Sometimes when we're dealing with policy, we often get into procedure just because they sometimes go hand in hand. Though this policy was on the table for quite some time, I think myself and others, maybe of the board and certainly of the administration, may share your similar concern in that it is difficult to police a process, but we know that as we are working to bring the new fields online and as we are implementing a new software system, we are working towards a new process, different than what we've done in the past. And I've delegated that particular responsibility to Mr. Whiteleather, and I know that he's worked recently very well with many of the major community youth groups and getting the schedules established. So while I appreciate your comment on the policy being, fine, but the procedure needing some work, we too recognize that there's always going to be better ways to do things, and we need to fine-tune that. But with the key in mind to making sure that we're doing what's best for the community groups in the Methacton community.
Does anyone want to take 12.2 or 12.3 separately? Then can I have a motion on approving 12.2 and 12.3? Ms. Woodring, second. Mr. Pellicano? Any discussion?
I would just like to call everybody's attention to our second reading of 819 and the associated attachment. The Suicide Awareness Prevention and Response Policy is new. It is a PSBA sort of draft, and on that particular policy, we're going to have to change the header. But it would have, timing being what it is, it would have been nice to insert that into our handbooks. That's required. Dr. Angstead has let us know that it just formalizes many of the procedures that we already had in place, but for maybe some of the training issues that go along with the staff. But the attachment is a list of resources. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew it was new. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other, Mr. Pellicano?
Yeah, just on 12.3, I'd like to reiterate what I guess Mrs. Woodring said earlier about the student handbooks. I wanted to thank everybody who participated, and I think they did a very good job on that. Very well done. So thanks for everybody's participation.
Thank you.
If I could just say one other thing, I'm sorry to interrupt you. With regards to student handbooks, whenever we, adopt or if there is a policy change that we approve, we certainly have the liberty then to update the handbooks. When we're asking the board to approve the handbooks, primarily what we're asking you to do is to approve the school code of student conduct. That is the rules and regulations for which our administrators have the right to work with students in issues that may result in discipline. So primarily your role here this evening in adopting the handbooks is for that matter, whereas when we update policies, because this committees were combined to suggest that we update our handbook and put it on the website, it allows us the flexibility once policies are approved or they need to be updated and changed, we can update the handbook accordingly. It's just a student code of conduct that needs to be addressed on an annual basis. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that, and that's a good thing going forward for the policy committee.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Any other comments? Then can we have a vote, all those in favor of approving the 5 policies under second reading and the student handbooks? Okay, 7-0. Thank you. Other, Dr. Zerbe?
I have no items under 13.
So the dates for board members' calendars, September 8th, 2015 at 7 p.m. is the Education Committee meeting. September 9th at 9:30 a.m. is the Policy Committee. September 14th at 7:30 a.m. is the Property Committee. September 15th at 6:30 p.m. is the Human Resources Committee meeting, and at 7:30 p.m. the Finance Committee meeting. And on September 22nd will be the next school board meeting at 7 o'clock p.m. Is there any old business? Okay. Is there any new business? Well, first we have PSBA candidate elections are located on the agenda here. Does anyone have a comment on PSBA candidate elections? I checked the website of the PSBA while we're here, and I see that the vote closes September 28th. So we do have another meeting. Ms. Woodring?
Well, I was just going to say that I did go to the PSBA candidate website and reviewed these candidates, and there are candidates that they list as endorsed. However, when I read their endorsement criteria, it seemed more like a certification, because they have, for example, 2 candidates that are running for president-elect, and they're both endorsed. So I don't know how much difference that makes, but there's certainly a wide variety of talent and skill and knowledge, and some folks are very much the vocational technical sort of angle. Other folks are heavy in the area of child advocacy, so there's certainly a wide variety of talent and skill here.
Do you wish to make a recommendation?
I sure would. My recommendations would be Mark Miller for president-elect, Mr. Fascinetto out of, I think, Delaware County as vice president, and I guess I'm confused there. Fascinetto is the Bethlehem area school district. Mr. Feinberg is out of Delco. He's from Haverford, and those would be my recommendations.
So would you like to make a motion that we elect, vote for Mark B. Miller for president-elect, Michael Fascinetto for vice president, and Larry Feinberg for Eastern at Large? Would you like to make a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Mr. Roth? Okay. Any discussion?
I mean, I would, since we have the time to go to the September 28th, I mean, my preference would be to wait and do a little bit more research, but that's just my preference.
I would agree with Greg's comments.
Does somebody want to make a motion to table this motion then?
Oh, we already have a motion on this one.
Yeah, table. Yeah. Mr. McFarland, okay. And Mr. Pellicano, okay. There's a motion to table the presented motion. Can I have a vote on the table motion? All those in favor? Okay. So that passes 7-0. Okay. Thank you. Is there any other new business?
Yes, I have some items, please.
Okay.
I want to talk about a couple things that have been, some things that we've talked about in briefing mentioned, but I want to bring it up in public and in front of the board too. The first item I'd like to talk about is somehow either, for lack of better terms, creating a board policy on scheduling district presentations on the nights of board meetings, regular school board meetings. There was a presentation that was being held at Arcola tonight regarding curriculum that I really, really wanted to go to, but I felt my duty to be here because of the agenda items going on and the fact that I did miss the last board meeting. So we made other arrangements. We split things, got people to watch kids, and my wife was able to attend that meeting. But I really would like, and actually I would like to charge the policy committee on developing some type of policy that would prevent district presentations being held on the regular school board meeting nights, okay? This would, and here are some of the items that would be, that I would like to be considered. It would exclude sporting events because sometimes sporting events have to be held on a certain night because of involvement of other districts. It would apply to concerts, presentations by administration and/or building principals and departments thereof. It would not apply to school board committee or work session nights if work sessions are ever reinstated, only to the regular school board meeting night. If some event had to be held on the night of a school board meeting because of something having to do with a testing of a state mandated testing or requirement or something like that, the president and the superintendent would be able to make that change with notification to the board that would be happening with proper notice. And I really would like that to be talked about a little bit more. So if that can be either talked about in policy or however, that'd be really good. Things like this have happened throughout the district on my tenure as I've been on the board, and we got to do something about it. It's got to happen. There are too many people in the public that would maybe like to go to something else and also come to a board meeting because they have interest in topics being discussed, but also there's something going on that night in their school. I don't feel a parent should have to be pulled in either direction because of that. So I'm only asking for one night a month, 12 nights a year. Number two, I'd like the board to consider the bringing back work sessions. I really feel that that the work sessions were really valuable in the past, especially in my first 4 years on the board, and we changed the way they were done. We had really good, meaningful discussions as a board. We handled a lot of good topics in that way, in a roundtable fashion, not in this fashion here, okay? And if that means going to another school building because this room does not lend itself, then so be it. It's more important to me to have that meeting, okay, than to not have it at all or to have it in some form where I have to, look across the table 25 or 30 feet to talk to another board member, okay? I really believe the value of those work sessions has been missed on this board in the past year. I know Christian's not here, and this was part of his deal, and I respect his thing because I concurred. He came to me about this way back when, and I said, sure, let's give it a try, moving out of the work sessions into the committee meetings. There has been things that have been there's just been things missing, and I think that we could run better as a board, also communicate a little bit better as well. I would also like, if we do this, to restructure these work sessions. I'd like to look into other school districts and see how they're handling them. I would not like them, and I emphasize this, work sessions would not be a vehicle for presentations to the board by administration or other groups. They would be there to discuss the board agenda for the following week and all items on it, okay? This is what has been missing, and we need to get back to that. Also, it would follow the definite regular format of a public meeting, so there would be public comments as always, but there would not be action items, okay? The only exception to that rule is, again, if we have to follow, if the work session happens to fall in the way the calendars and the way the moon planets align and due to budgetary restrictions and we have to approve a preliminary budget at a work session, it's been done before, but that's because of the way things have happened and the way things have lined up. But again, I would, really emphasize that because the past work sessions when we were having with previous administrators were just too much. There was too much going on, and we couldn't get things done right. And I would also like them to be less formal, more roundtable oriented, like we used to have. We really had a lot of good discussions. The last point I would like the board to also evaluate is our committee structures. We've been running the committee systems now for about a year. I think it's time to reevaluate their effectiveness and also how they're running as far as getting work done and are there some things we could do to improve the committees and how they run? Meeting time intervals, scopes of the committees, structures, need for any new committees or eliminations of another. I mean, we really just need to reevaluate that. And also, again, look at how other school districts are doing this and handle similar situations. I know PSBA has a lot of information on this, and we could look into that some more. And that may be something that we can work with at a board retreat or something like that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Is there any other new business?
Not new business, but I would like to just mention that I directionally would agree with Herb's comments regarding the review of work sessions and committees.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. Ms. Shackelford?
Yeah, I just want to agree with the one thing with the work sessions. I was against eliminating them I liked the round table that we used to have, that set up when we met over at Skyview. I think we got a lot of good communication, good talking, was very informal. Like you said, it's tough to try to communicate with somebody down the other end of the table, so I would definitely be in favor of bringing back work sessions.
Thank you, Ms. Shackelford. Any other new business? Okay, then we'll move to courtesy of the floor. And at this point, we encourage our citizens to tell us your concerns about the school district and to give us ideas and suggestions that you believe will be valuable as we fulfill our role on behalf of the district. Questions will be answered directly via email to the questioner. There will also be a recap of questions and answers asked on our website under Questions and Answers on the board page, as we have done in recent meetings. So, please state your name and your address, your township.
My name is Kurt Reichwein. I live in Lower Providence Township. I think it's admirable that we give accolades, as Dr. Zerbe stated earlier, to the student team that participated in the program in Texas. All right? We're dealing with students who are interested in engineering. So why is it that our school district is light years behind in its technology education program and the implementation of STEM-based programs? In the event that you haven't been paying attention, STEM programs seem to be mentioned almost daily in the news. There are $600 million available in grant funds to implement such programs. They are available from the elementary level all the way to the high school level. You do not need to invent them. They are out there for the implementation. I would suggest that this school district look at other school districts that surround our district. I teach at North Penn School District. We are a Project Lead the Way school. We run an engineering program that puts numerous kids each year, not just kids that participate in an extracurricular activity, kids that are actively engaged and enrolled in coursework that they earn college credit with us in high school. I have tried to communicate some concerns about this from the teacher perspective. I feel as if we really need to embrace technology in the year 2015. I feel this district is lacking severely in its technology implementation across the board. So instead of focusing on small groups of students, let's focus on the entire student body. I think it's really critical for success as a whole. All right, STEM careers are on the rise. There's no two questions about it. So I think that we need to consider moving toward a curriculum that's going to truly be a STEM-based program. We can never be a world-class educational system until we embrace change. Thank you.
Okay, Chris Boardman, Worcester Township. I wanted to talk about the Pell study and give you some observations from what I've been doing. While my kids were busy reading their books over the summer, I did my reading. I went out and actively searched for every Pell study I could find that they've done in recent years. And the time frame I looked at was from 2007, 2008 forward, because that's when the recession hit and things changed dramatically. In reviewing about 16 of their studies, what I found is a consistent bias in their results. Example of that bias would be if I went around the table and estimated everybody's weight and I was consistently 20 pounds low, everybody would be happy about that, but it's a consistent bias that I saw the same thing in their studies. They're consistently underestimating school enrollments by about 2 to 4%, which is way beyond what they claim and they continue to claim, and it's directional. During this time period of steep decline in the recession, they've been consistently underprojecting. From schools that are smaller than ours, like Radnor, where they have about 3,600 students, and they projected a decrease in Radnor's enrollment actually increased by 1.5%, to schools larger than ours like Souderton, which is about 6,500 students. So what I did is for those 16 studies that they did, I compared the projected volumes to last school year, the 2014-2015 school year, and I actually called school districts and got that at the actual. So, you know, it doesn't take much to compare that projected number to the actual, and that's what I based my comments on about how far they're off. So if you look at a 5-year projection for our school system based on the average error that they've produced and the bias they've produced in those 16 studies, the difference between the projected volumes that they put in the reports versus what would be more realistic based on those 16 studies would be about 550 students, which in our terms is well over 1 year's worth of graduating students. So, you've had multiple interactions with them and they've told you that all the studies are accurate and they do a great job with it, but the studies they've done in the past don't tell that same picture. So I just give you that as food for thought as you move forward. I'm glad to see that you're going to be working with some new companies. Keep in mind that what Pell was telling you is not supported by all the studies they do, and I would ask you to use that same discretion in reviewing all the studies that these other companies that are coming up are going to be telling you that they do accurately. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Paul Winters, Lower Providence. I have, as my wife would show, no segues between these 4 different subjects. So I have three miscellaneous questions and one comment. One comment, Mr. Roth, I applaud you for your leadership in trying to bring back the working sessions. Obviously, there's a need for them, and the community certainly is glad that somebody has stood up and said they really want them back. Hopefully, Mr. Nascimento would consider that when he comes back. Second issue is when it comes to the lighting. It's in the Court of Appeals. It doesn't need to stay there if we make a decision to compromise with the Worcester Township. So if we're not going to appeal the appeal, I suggest that we try to save some money and try to provide a resolution in a tax-efficient methodology, and could really consider if it makes sense to continue to wait 3 months for a decision on the lighting. Another question I have is on the capacity study with Thompson Associates. First question, where are they out of? Are they local or Harrisburg? Thank you. And from the perspective of, it's a major component in the evaluation of the potential closure of a school, an elementary school. So I don't know if there's an RFP to evaluate the capacity study or if it's something that could be done in-house. I guess I'm sorry if I missed that along the way. If what we're doing on the capacity component, if there's not enough capacity with 22 or 23 kids in elementary schools and keeping the principal the same size, and if there's not enough capacity for the special ed and for some growth, and especially when you talk about the potential that the measurements are even wrong, the projections are wrong, then we're wasting a lot of time, of everybody's time, if there's not even room. So the last question I would have, last month, Dr. Zerbe, if I'm correct, was awarded a 2.5% raise effective July 1st. To a salary of $174,250. And my understanding through the school board is that the school board is required to post their performance evaluation on the website. I think it's a legal requirement from the state. So I thought, okay, I will go and look at the performance evaluation that is posted on the FACT. And I also looked at what is posted in other school districts. This is Unionville Chadds Ford School District. It's an 11-page performance evaluation form that looks at student growth and achievement, organizational leadership, operation of financial management, communication and community relations, strengths and the weaknesses, improvement opportunities, goals, HR management, and professionalism. We have the same exact definitions listed for Dr. Zerbe, and Dr. Zerbe, I'm not expressing an opinion one way or another. But the official performance measured on the website is, quote, "It is the evaluation of the board that Dr. Zerbe meets these standards." 11 pages at Unionville, and we get one sentence. I highly recommend, from a policy perspective, that we evaluate what we're posting for Dr. Zerbe if it's a requirement so that we understand what we have and how we're evaluating and how we're going to evaluate them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Pete DiPiano, Audubon, and I wasn't at the July meeting, but I wanted to
follow up on a discussion from the June meeting. During the public comment session during the June meeting, one parent from Audubon had questioned whether or not board members had walked through the elementary schools and seen the classes. And Mr. Nascimento is not here, but the comment was that the board is in the schools all the time. Another parent from a different, I believe it was Arrowhead, came in and said, I've never really seen you there. Just want to be sure that you're saying now that you guys have, actually toured the schools during the school year and seen classes. And he said yes. The board said yes. And I think you're aware that I filed a right to know. And I read through over 350 pages of sign-in sheets from this past school year. And there was not a single board member who signed in to visit Audubon or Arrowhead. And my question would be, why were we told something different? I'll write that question for you.
Oh, okay. Did you want to work on it? Yeah. Hi, Ashley Wilkerson from Audubon. I want to start first by saying, Mr. Roth, thank you so much for everything you said. It was refreshing to hear those suggestions, and I think we're looking forward to maybe seeing those working sessions start again. What I want to talk about is actually something that dates back to the board meeting at the end of April, where Mr. Lutweiler brought up the LED sign ordinance and the fact that it had been brought up by the Planning Commission of Lower Providence Township and had Methacton's name on it. And there was some discussion, as nobody here could figure out how that had happened. Dr. Zerbe, what I have is from you, I think there might be some confusion. The truth of the matter is the Methacton School District is not party to a matter before Lower Providence Township. And so although there's speculation that we have a matter before the township, either currently or formally, we're not aware of those issues. I just want to be clear on our involvement in that because there was an assumption at the last board meeting. And Mr. McFarland, you said that you were at that township meeting and you were trying to figure out as well why Methacton's name was on that ordinance. And Dr. Zerbe, you replied that all I can say is since I've been here, we've not had an application before the township. And there was a lot of discussion that maybe it dated to a suit years ago. And that was perplexing to me because as I was going through some right-to-know requests, I had memos that you, Dr. Zerbe, send to the board on a weekly basis. And I have one from April of 2014, and the heading is Arcola Skyview Sign. And it says, I want the board to be aware that I've resurrected the concept of the Skyview Arcola sign near the red light at the intersection of Arcola and Eagleville Roads. I've contacted Lower Providence Township to define the process for which I need to engage and make this happen. I'll be working with our solicitor to finalize a plan to get this done. Please see the attached design that was previously approved. And then I have some emails from the township that are going to Eric Frey, who I believe is with Mr. Bartle's firm, setting up the meeting. And I've got a memo again from Dr. Zerbe to the board on June 6, 2014, saying a meeting is scheduled with the township on June 12th for the Arcola Skyview signage. And so I went down to the township and I did a right to know there, and I got the staff solicitor meeting notes from June 12th of 2014. And there's a meeting titled Methacton School District Sign at Arcola Intermediate School. Representing the district is Eric Frey and Dr. Zerbe. And there were some township people, one of the supervisors, township manager, a whole bunch of people. And the action item was that Eric Frey, the attorney for the school district, was going to draw up a proposed ordinance for the township. And so let's see, in September, he sends an email, and there's a draft of the ordinance. And when I went and looked at September's bills from this past year, there's a line item from Mr. Bartle's firm. It's entitled Arcola Sign Legal Fee, and it's for just under $15,000. And it was upsetting to me for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is when I was going through this information, there was a parent from Norristown School District who was transferring to our school district, and she asked me about the Reading Olympics program at our school specifically because it was something one of her children had really enjoyed. And I had to tell her that we didn't have that anymore, that that had been cut from our programming. And I had to tell her that while I was looking and seeing that we'd spent $15,000 in legal fees on the Arcola sign. And so my question is, why?
Michael Ryan, Lower Providence. I apologize for getting up here and talking about a financial issue again, but to me, this is a perfect way that you can tie finances of a district to every other aspect in it. So recently I saw that the current budget booklet was uploaded to the district. To say that I'm disappointed in this document would be a huge understatement. The current year budget booklet includes just a couple of charts and graphs, the PDE state document, and the final budget presentation. In a time when the board continues to hear from all of the public that we would like more information, more transparency, and to understand the district's finances better, this is basically the board and the administration once again ignoring what its taxpayers want. Just a few years ago, Methacton District used to provide the following information in its budget booklet, and it no longer does. Overall district financial narrative, historical data including actuals and variances to the current budget, description of budget functions and options, reasons for increase in budget functions and options, the millage history of the district, a building-by-building budget, current and historical data, an athletic budget, current and historical data, a capital improvement plan, a 3-year summary, capital plan by building and list of capital projects to be completed over the next 3 years, general and capital fund historical balances and a 3-year projection, detailed listing of all district outstanding debt by bond series, historical and future projected PSERS contributions. If you look at Springford, Lower Merion, Radnor, all these districts have these types of information. It takes into account everything that goes on in the district. You want to look at some of the stuff that they include that we didn't in the past? How about listing of district employees by grouping, the number of non-Act 93 administrators, Act 93 administrators, professional and support staff, a special education profile, listing of the number of students served, the funding, the average cost per student, the latest outlook by Moody's, district charter school information, average expenditures per pupil and ranked among neighboring districts, economic outlook for district, major employers, retail development, etc. All of that is missing. We got basically just a thrown together haphazard booklet that never would have flown 3 years ago. Why is this important? Go to the Finance Committee meeting that was just a couple nights ago. There was talk about a bond restructuring. The public was given no handouts, no information or anything. And they're talking about redoing the bond series. There was questions of what was the current debt, the current interest rate for this debt. There was a hesitation. We weren't sure. However, if you had provided the historical listing of all outstanding debt by bond series, this would have been perfectly in front of you and you would have seen it, both as a board, a committee, and the public. This is information we should have. Thank you.
Shannon Peffer, Lower Providence. First of all, Mr. Roth, I want to thank you again, and please excuse me, my husband, but I did say I wanted to hug you. That was fantastic, and it was from the heart. Sorry, hon. I just had a few thoughts that I wanted to share with the board, and they are not as organized or as eloquent as the people that have come before me, and for that I apologize. I never meant to get this involved, but I really can't let myself stay silent. I was on the district website the other day, and I stumbled upon Dr. Zerbe's entry plan from 2013 that was published November 11th, 2014. In one section, he spoke to the condition of Methacton's physical facilities. He said these are in good to excellent condition. 2 months later, we were told by the Thompson report that the buildings were in good to fair condition. So I'd like to know which one is the truth. Is it good to excellent? Is it good to fair? I find it highly unlikely that in the case of 2 months, the state of all of our facilities would deteriorate that much. In the preferred future section of his entry plan, Dr. Zerbe stated the wish to increase participation in the decision-making process for the collective benefit of the community. And student achievement facilities, infrastructure, and extracurricular activities are representative of the community's expectations. Be careful what you wish for. You have the desire for increased participation by community members, but unfortunately, we don't really seem to have much opportunity to participate. For the community committees, you received 124 applications, 122 if you don't count the 2 individuals added to the Enrollment Capacity Committee by personal invitation, one of which I believe works with Mr. Pelicano and one is a Facebook friend of his. By the way, there were 48 applicants for this committee, including 7 Audubon parents, none of whom were selected. From my perspective, it doesn't appear that you needed to solicit volunteers. excuse me. My interest in this board's activities is so much deeper than the school closing issue. The seeming lack of transparency and the utter disdain for the community which you serve is alarming, to say the least. Ms. Woodring, Mr. Pelicano, Ms. Hackett, while reading emails obtained by right to know requests, I was very impressed with your thoughtfulness and your concern for all aspects of the school closing issue. I truly was. But I'd like to know, were your questions answered, your concerns that were raised to Dr. Zerbe and Mr. Nascimento in February? There were several questions that each of you asked that I don't see responses to. It's curious to me how silent the board members can be when the community is watching. How is it possible that you vote unanimously time and time again, but raise questions with each other in email? I know I'm not alone in my desire to see this process at work, and hopefully with work sessions, this may actually come to fruition. To quote Mr. Pelicano's email to Mr. Nascimento and Ms. Hackett on February 6th, you're right. Many of your constituents, myself included, really haven't studied your budget that closely. But to the average citizen, it doesn't make sense to use a surplus, I think the amount was in excess of $800,000, to prevent raising taxes this year. For the first time, I guess, in the last 30 years, when we know you're anticipating a 12.8% deficit in 5 years. You can't blame PCERS entirely for this. Have you ever heard of saving for a rainy day? Or is it this board's intent to play kick the can so another board can be blamed for having to raise taxes later? It doesn't seem to be a fiscally responsible decision to
Ms. Pfeffer, will you wrap up?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Quoting some of your emails, I'm not sure which one of you said it because it was kind of passed back and forth. We were in the angry mob phase, according to you, back in February, and we did give you that group of T-shirted school supporters,
Ms. Pfeffer, you've
picket
exceeded
signs,
your 3
etc.
minutes by a bit.
Absolutely. We are not an angry mob driven solely by emotion. We are an organized group of frustrated parents and community members. We just hope that your decisions are...
Your time is up. Thank you.
Michelle Kirshner, Audubon. I just wanted to come up here because I did notice that on the website there are some missing committee minutes out there. And as we're talking about the Sunshine Act, I just wanted to point out a few clauses. First is number 703, which specifically states that school boards fall under the definition of an agency. Next, jumping down to clause number 703, which states written minutes shall be kept on all open meetings of agencies. The meeting shall include written minutes of all open meetings. With that said, I can't seem to find some minutes, just 2 examples off the top of my head, the August 3rd Education Committee meeting and the August 12th Policy Commission meeting. So I just would like to request that all meeting minutes be posted in a timely manner so that for parents and the community who can't make it to every meeting, we do have the opportunity to read through those and keep up with what's going on.
I'm Lisa Chaya. I'm from Lower Providence. And I appreciate the 3-minute timing, and I think that's important. So I'm just going to finish up Shannon's letter here with my 3 minutes. But before I do, I just wanted to say one thing, and that is I have been a teacher for over 20 years in a neighboring school district. And believe me when I say I understand what school boards go through. I understand. I also know what teachers go through, and it has been very enlightening to me, having 2 children of my own, to see what parents go through. Everyone who is in this room right now is in this room for the same reason. And it's just one reason. We just want our community to have a good school. That's why you're here. That's why we're here. That's why we're all here. And it pains me to see us getting to this level of animosity. And I don't think it's good for any of us. That's not where you want to be. It's not where we want to be. It's not where any of us want to be. And the only thing I wanted to say was that this pains me. And I believe truly in my heart it pains every person in this room right now. And I just hope I hope that we can get ourselves back to a place where we are working in just a good faith effort, where we as a community can trust that you're hearing our needs, and you as a school board can trust that we're not here just to cause problems and make your lives difficult, that we're here just because we really do care, and just like you do. So I just hope that at some point we can get to that point again. Now I'm just going to finish off her letter. Quoting some of your emails, you said we were in the angry mob phase. And yes, we gave you the group of T-shirted school supporters, picket signs, etc. on February 23rd. But we are not stupid. Give us a little credit. To date, Dr. Zerbe and this board have not demonstrated much integrity or truthfulness. From the cooked-up scheme to potentially close 2 schools, then settle on just one, the one most immediately available for resale, according to one slide from the presentation, to the pre-drafted press release sent from Mr. Nascimento to Dr. Zerbe touting a unanimous vote the day before such a vote even took place. We are not an angry mob driven solely by emotion. We are an organized group of frustrated parents and community members, and we are driven by facts and statistics and the need to have all of the information before decisions are made that could be both costly and educationally unsound. Thank you.
Andrea Reese, Lower Providence. Thank you, Mrs. Chaya. I think you eloquently put what many of us are feeling. Some of us, myself included, get overly passionate about these issues, and there has been a lot of negativity and animosity, and we do need to be better role models for everybody in this community. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but thank you again, Mr. Roth, for bringing up the work sessions. This may seem small, but small things add up to big things, so I'd also like to thank you for something small we've brought up before. Simple thing of a lunch menu being late. You know, it's there September after the 1st of the month, and it seems silly, but many of us working parents plan on little things like that. Well, the lunch menu is up and rolling for September already, so there we go. There's little things that make a difference, because I spoke to Aramark and I asked him what the issue was, and he said, well, we use somebody else's lunch menu, so we don't always get it in time. So thank you for getting it on time, because as a working parent, I need to plan my grocery list. Little things do make a difference. Bigger things, obviously, are on everybody's mind, and I would like to bring up the Philadelphia Inquirer article that was recently posted or recently published. We don't want animosity, and we don't want our school district in the newspapers other than for positive. It is not anybody at this table's fault for some of the transgressions. It describes the resignation of a superintendent. It describes a former board president's settlement of an assault suit. It describes the abrupt withdrawal of a GOP school board candidate. None of that is your fault. But the only new thing in that article was Dr. Zerbe's comments, which I had never heard before, and they were interesting. They stated, and I'm going to quote this, Superintendent David Zerbe said last week the school closing dispute was frustrating. There's no one in this community that wants to see a school closure, and I live in the community. Zerbe said falling enrollment and underused classrooms were driving the issue. It further goes on to say, Zerbe said community members overreacted to what was simply smart and proper preparation by district officials. No foregone conclusions or decisions have been made, he said. The documents suggest that there is concern, not only from the superintendent, but from the board and the public, that we do this in a proper manner. If the plan had gone according to the suggestion given to this board, a week from today, Audubon would have not opened. We have yet to be given any plan. That's all we're asking. We don't need attendance lines to be drawn. All we're asking is, what is Worcester going to look like? What is Woodland going to look like? What is Arrowhead going to look like? And what is Eagleville going to look like? How many fourth graders are going to be in each building? How many third graders? How many second graders? How many first graders? How many kindergartners? Where's learning support going? Where's speech going? Where's reading going? Where's challenge going? This is all things that the district should have known and probably does know, but we weren't told. So I understand that you're frustrated by everything. I do, but so are we. It is simple. Just tell us what it would look like so we can make an educated decision. And I know that that's coming in December. I haven't had my 3 minutes.
Yes, you
I
have.
don't, really?
Yes.
Really? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Well, I'll save it. I had why issues and all kinds of things. Like, why is the why not opening?
Next time.
Susan Washburn, Lower Providence Township as well. I'm not nearly as prepared as these people too, but I again have been stirred sort of to the cause. I hate politics. I've never been involved, but I'm in the medical community, and I had a patient come in my office the other day and said, Sue, a doctor told me I needed heart surgery. I said, well, what doctor was that? Oh, he's not a very good doctor. He's actually messed up before, but he told me I needed heart surgery. Okay, I'm going to have heart surgery. Well, shouldn't you get a second opinion? Yeah, he said I should get a second opinion. And actually, at a family meeting, he said we should get a second opinion. I'm not getting a second opinion. Joe, what are you talking about? You need a second opinion. I'm just getting the heart surgery. It's not a big deal. Do you have a plan for the surgery? Do you know when the surgery is going to be? Do you know who's going to be in the room? Do you know how many doctors it takes? What kind of surgery you're having? No, we'll worry about all that later. Again, this is how we all feel. This is our heart. This is our kids. Give us a plan, exactly like Andrea said. We are rational. We truly, I don't think anyone's been yelling and screaming. It amazes me how in touch and educated our community is. And give us credit for just wanting data and correct decision-making with a plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Drummond, Lower Providence. I just, on a completely, sort of different topic, I just wanted to give feedback about the electronic facility scheduling resource. As a home and school president and a home and school treasurer on 2 separate boards, I have not heard anything about electronic facility scheduling. I had to really kind of pull some teeth to get the link to be able to get into the facility scheduling. And I'm also the treasurer for the Girl Scout Service Unit. They want to schedule things. No one has heard anything as far as I know. I know the Y has scheduled things. Home and School has not heard anything. None of the presidents, nobody has. We don't know how to do it. I was sending in my usual paper form for the ice cream social, which is scheduled for September 25th, so let's hope school's open, for Woodland. And I just sent it, I submitted my paper form thinking that that was the correct thing to do because there was no updated information. And I never heard back that that was not the correct thing to do. I even followed up and said, I haven't heard back with a confirmation. Please let me know if you need more information. Nothing. So finally, through the school administrative assistant, I did get the link, and I'm sharing the link, but I don't feel like that should really be the way this should be handled. So that's on a different topic, but now I'm back to the other topic, which is the school capacity. And in my opinion, the next step should be a true capacity study, not to spend more tax money on another enrollment projection. A detailed report should be done to look at each room in each school and how it is used. Yes, there was a whole 5th grade in the school, but the special ed population has also increased, and those students have their own requirement for space. And I know parents in every single school who would be capable of doing this capacity study for you now and for free. And we could prepare a capacity report saying room 101 is used this percentage, room 102, in every single school. And you can have that done for free from us to help you with this decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Melissa Hepschman-Schreiber again. I just had a question with regard to insurance and whether it's going to cover the home and school boards for the 2015-2016 school year. I haven't seen anything definitive that it was going to be funded or covered by the school board. I know they covered it for half of last year. And so, as far as I know, I'm on the board at Audubon. I was also part of coordinating council, which we haven't really met over the summer at all. I'm no longer on the board, so maybe something else has happened that I'm unaware of. But I haven't heard any final decision or recommendation about that. We have full calendars and events coming up starting within the next week or two where a lot of us, including myself, are volunteers, and I know I don't want to be personally responsible if there's a home and school event where something happens to go wrong. So if we could get an answer on that within the next week, that would be great. Also, if we could see the actual rider or some document that indicates to what level we have coverage, that would also put our minds at ease and allow us to go in and focus on the children and having fun.
Thank you. Will you give that information to Ms. Lynch, your email address? Thank you.
Anyone else?
Candy Alaba, Eagleville. Herb, thank you. I've been saying the last couple months we need a work session back. Thank you for bringing it up. It's nice to see the support. As far as sitting in a circle, that's nice, but with your back to the audience, that borders on rudeness, and some in the audience has trouble hearing when you speak because there's no microphones.
I'll tell you my reason for that. And I normally, you know me, I've been to these meetings for many years. I don't usually comment during public comment because this is your time. But the work session would be for the board's work, to do the work. There's no public comment on action items because there are no action items. That's
No,
my
but there was
premise.
always public comment at the end.
And then that's fine, but during the time frame, the structure of the meeting needs to be such that all of us are facing each other so we can have open dialogue and easily.
Oh, I understand that,
during the
but it's
public
hard to
comment-
hear because you didn't have the microphones.
That's fine, all those logistics things can come out, but it's not to be rude or anything like that, because that's not the intention.
Oh, no, I understand. It just feels that way. I'm just jousting with you.
Okay, that's fine.
My other comment is we now have Mr. Whiteleather, who got a substantial raise in a title change. There was a memo or a letter sent out this week about the kids on the school buses swiping to get on and off the bus. My first question is, why did he send it out? Why didn't the transportation director that we hired send this information out? Or why didn't Dr. Zerbe, and why was it not discussed tonight? And also, why was it not discussed tonight that our lunch ladies are now going to part-time and most of them are losing their health insurance? And why isn't Aramark here to discuss that with the public? This is stuff that needs to be discussed at a school board meeting. And also, Dr. Zerbe, you stated, and I'm going to take my time because we weren't allowed to have courtesy of the floor last month. And we was not continued over to the beginning of the meeting. I have never, in all the 9-10 years that I have come to these meetings, seen that behavior that happened last month, where the public was completely cut off from making comments. And it's not because we were missing 4 school board directors. There's 3 avenues for them to look at a meeting, maybe 4. Get a DVD, watch the TV, watch YouTube, or watch the website. That was a poor excuse for not allowing the public to speak because there was 5 here to vote on an important matters. Now, with that being said, Dr. Zerbe mentioned about the PSSA testing. My question is, if the 3rd graders are be testing in English, and the test was for 4th graders, why did they go ahead and give the test, knowing these kids haven't studied for it? I mean, I'm just curious. As if I was the teacher, I would look at this test and say, this is a higher grade level. Why would I give this to my students? Because that leaves them open to fail immediately. So I would refuse to give the test to the kids. It would just be no, flat out, and if the state had a problem with it, then they would have to discuss it. But that leaves us open to fail, and then we show up as a failing school district. We don't come off looking good. Now, you stated the Sunshine lawsuit. I am the only one in the room that was involved in that lawsuit. That lawsuit cost the taxpayers $80,000. And it cost that much because the school district continued to drag it out for 4 years. They were in clear violation of the Sunshine laws. It was on DVD. The school district decided in January of 2012 to settle the lawsuit. Mr. Bartle's firm handled it. And they agreed to what we were asking for. And one of the agreements is now part of School Policy 006, Section 11. And that is when you're announcing executive session. Tonight there was 4 announcements of executive session, and none of them were announced according to the school policy. When you're discussing personnel, and it goes part of your school policy 006, the announcement shall include the lawful purpose of the executive session as well as the reason for holding the executive session. When announcing an executive session in which existing litigation was discussed, the following information shall be provided. Number 1, name of the parties. Number 2, court in which it's filed. Number 3, the docket number of the case. You mentioned the lawsuit in front of the Common Police Court with Worcester about the lights. And no, I don't agree the school board should compromise with Worcester. Worcester needs to compromise with us and give us our lights. When announcing an executive session in which an identifiable complaints or threat litigation is discussed, the nature of the complaint shall be announced. When announcing an executive session in which personnel matters or negotiations are discussed, a description of the matter discussed shall be identified with sufficient specificity to inform the public that there is, in reality, a specific discrete matter or area which is proper executive session items. I've sat here for the last couple years after this agreement was signed, before some of the present school board members were on the board. And I have sat here after meeting and heard, we met in executive session and we discussed personnel. We met in executive session, we discussed negotiation. That is violating the Sunshine Law. I have a copy of the agreement that was signed by the board. I have a copy of the Sunshine Law. I suggest the board members who were given a copy of the Sunshine Law when they came on the board, when Dr. Kuhn was here, to read it. Read the agreement that was signed, because at this point, we can go back in front of the court and show that you're violating the agreement. I am the only person in the room that was here, so I suggest you start following. And as far as answering the public's questions, when you send me a tax bill that says it's due in 6 days, and I stand in front of this room and I ask a question publicly on tape, I have the right to an answer publicly. Because if you don't want to answer my question or anyone else's, why should we pay our taxes? We pay the salary of the administration building. You people are elected officials. And contrary to popular belief in the past, the school board believed they do not work for the taxpayers. Yes, you do. When you demand that we pay for this school district, I demand answers to my questions. I am not going to hand them in. I am going to stand here when I ask a question tonight, if you can't answer it, and you should be able to. Mr. Whiteleather should have every answer in front of him. Every answer. He should be able to answer anything on that list of bills. And if you don't want to answer the questions,
Thank you, Mrs. Oliver.
then you shouldn't be sitting there. And you shouldn't be cutting me off.
We have a 3-minute policy.
I know you have a 3-minute policy, and you can let that go. I know exactly what. You can let it go and let the public be heard, instead of cutting us off when you don't want to hear what we have to say.
I think we've listened to what you had to say. Thank you.
Then you ought to listen a lot harder.
Would you like to speak?
Yes.
Thank you.
Joe Bickelman from Audubon. Mrs. Woodring had a question about the Grove City School District disbursement, and it wasn't answered. I think I can give you a little bit of background from my experience with disbursements to Grove City School District. My experience was that there's a detention center that's located in the Grove City School District, and a resident student would be in that detention center, and the Grove City School District would be responsible providing educational services to that student. So that's my experience with Grove City, because that does stick out on the bills list, and you know, I would get that question a lot. I think the fact that the minutes weren't amended to reflect the removal of courtesy of the floor, you know, that doesn't speak to the items that you mentioned, Mrs. Hackett, at the beginning, as far as, you know, being I don't know, mutual respect or above board or honesty or whatever it is, but, sometimes you got to put those things in the minutes, because that was the first 10 or 15 minutes of the meeting, was the disallowing the courtesy of the floor. So it should go in the minutes, and it really, it's buried now. It's not in the minutes. It's buried, and nobody knows about it, supposedly. As far as making the district better, I think the state annual financial report, PDE 2057, should be put on, scanned and PDF'd and put on the district's website. That would lend the public with more information on actuals and give a further breakdown to the various functions and objects in the district. There was a question about the capital reserve fund and where did all the money go. I think a good idea to make the district better and to make the information out there for the public is, you should have a capital reserve report and a construction report. It should, for these two different funds, it should show the receipts and disbursements and the ending cash balance, and below that, it should show the projects and the budgets and the expenditures to date and the balance yet to be achieved for the budgeted items for those projects. I think that would be a good idea for the construction fund and for the capital reserve fund. And when the project is complete, put in parentheses the school year that it was completed, and keep that on the report, at the bottom of the report after receipts and disbursements, so you can have a historical view of all the projects that were completed and how much was spent on each project, so that the public can see where the money went. I mean, that's a really good idea, I think. As far as the budget booklet, it does have a lot to be desired. There's not a lot of comparative data, not a lot of historical data. I think there should be a staffing report that we talked about, I think, in Finance Committee a little while ago. One last thing, I just want to make the board aware that regarding the outsourced bus drivers, the expenditure in my house now is about $5,800 a year for a health plan that isn't so good. And my wife went for a procedure, a diagnostic procedure, that she went to the same office for 20 years, and she presented the new card that we are first student, and they said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Bickelman, we don't accept that insurance anymore. So it'll be $170 for your diagnostic procedure." So that's just an added expense, and I'm just giving you an example of one person, one family, one household that was affected by the outsourcing. And good thing that happened in the office, they saw my wife was upset, so on our way out they cut $50 off the bill. They said, we'll cut you a little break there. So that was nice. But these are the kind of things that we're dealing with as a household, and there are effects on families like that. I understand that. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Bickelman.
My name is Jen Wright, and I'm from Lower Providence. As someone else said, I'm not as well-spoken as many of the people that have come before me, and I have definitely not done as much research as them. In fact, when I come to the board meetings, I hope not to speak. I just come to find out what's going on. But I sit in the audience, and I shake my head. I'm confused. Something as simple as voting on meeting minutes gets convoluted. Moments before the vote, the public ask for the meeting minutes to be amended. Are you voting on the amended minutes? Will there be an amendment? Will there not be an amendment? I'm confused. I don't know if you guys are, but I'm in the audience and I'm confused, and I think there's a lot of people in the audience that are confused as well. And I also think it's convoluted that I need to submit this question to a third party when there are people in the room that can answer it. What are you voting on? Are you voting on the minutes as they stand currently, or will there be an amendment? Do I really need to submit that question?
They were amended. There was no motion to amend.
Okay. Okay, so there will be no amendment that says, okay. Okay, so I have to think, isn't there a better way to get some answers? If something as simple as the approval of meeting minutes is confusing, how are we supposed to get answers to bigger questions, like school consolidations, closures? I don't know. I just come here to express that point of view, that I come here hoping never to speak, and I'm like, all I can do is shake my head. Thank you.
Ms. Wright.
Hi, Lynn Webb, Lower Providence. I just have a quick question. I actually had emailed you, Dr. Zerbe, a few times about this and never received a response. My question is regarding Arrowhead and the roof repairs, whether those roof repairs are actually going through for this calendar year. Just real, no yes or no? Okay, thank you. Oh, can I ask one more question? I'm sorry. I thought of one other thing. I'm a working parent, and I've been looking into before and after care for my children. And I had a question about the Y program. In the past, when there was a 2-hour delay for the Y, Myth Acton would open 2 hours late, which was still prior to the delay of school starting. And there was information provided that that would no longer be happening, that if there was a 2-hour delay, there would be no before care. You would just have to send your child on the bus or be dropped off at 8:50. So I'm wondering if that's the truth and why that decision was made by the district when that type of decision is not being made in other school districts that are local. Does that make sense? Okay.
Any other comments from the public? Then do we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Pellicano? Second? Mr. McFarland? All those in favor?